welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. It's now 3 minutes past 7 a.m. Thank you for being part of this show. My name is Victor Lo. Please find me on social media at Victor Lo. Now, getting into the discussion, today being a Wednesday is The Viewpoint. At The Viewpoint, we are still continuing with the discussion. This started on Monday. The Vision 2060 that is being launched, that will be launched next week by the President, the Vision 2060, that is going to be steering this country in the next 3 decades. But yes, before we get to the discussion, we shall be joined by Ken Bosire, who is a training and consulting editor, to help us unpack this. In 2001, he was actively involved in the newsrooms, and the institutional memory he has is quite rich. That is why I want us to have this discussion with him. Let's just go back the memory lane, the social, economic, and of course the political 3 pillars of the Vision 2030. Let's understand that in the next few minutes. But right about now, let me take you through the front page of the local dailies. The Standard reports another killing. Just on the front page of the Standard, another killing. All right. The Standard says that Eric Otieno left home to earn a living but never made it back alive. The 19-year-old border rider was arrested over what his family says was a minor traffic offense. Days later, they collected him from police custody, battered, in pain and struggling to stand. He died soon afterwards. A postmortem found that he had suffered fatal internal injuries caused by blunt force trauma, making him the latest face of the country's mounting allegations of police brutality and deaths in police custody. That is what the Standard is reporting. And of course, the case of about, the Standard talks about, it was about an accident. And so that is on the front page of the Standard. Very quickly, on the front page of the Star, Interpol, Kenyans lost 500 million shillings in SIM swap fraud. Kenyans lost 500 million shillings in SIM swap fraud. That is on the front page of the Star newspaper. But even with that, there's some good news when it comes to development in our respective counties. The Star has also given a ranking by an opinion poll which was done by Infotrack, giving different governors rankings as per their performance in their respective counties. Of course, we have got several counties led by Muranga, Irungu Kangata, who has 80%. Trans Nzoia, 76%, led by John Natembeya. We have Kimani Kiwamatangi of Kiambu, 71%. Gladys Wanga of Homa Bay coming fourth at 66%. Makueni, led by Mutula Kilonzo, is again at 66%. Wesley Rotich of Elgeyo Marakwet, 65%. Professor Nyang' Nyong'o of Kisumu is at 65%, tying with Elgeyo Marakwet. He's also tying with Simon Kachapin of West Pokot at 65%. And last but not least is Kisii County, headed by Simba Arati, 63%. And finally, Jonathan Lelelit, who is the governor of Samburu, at 63%. So yes, that is as per the Star newspaper and the Infotrack opinion polls. Linda Mwananchi to know its registration status this week. Remember, they met the registrar of political parties trying to register Linda Mwananchi as a political party. They were there yesterday, and yeah, they're waiting to hear and get to know because of the timelines that guides the registration of a political party. Those are some of the things they need to fix. So that story continues in the inner pages. And finally, on the front page, Ruto expands grassroots machine with elders and chiefs in 2027 drive. The story is well fleshed out there for you on page 6 of the Star newspaper. And I think it should be important that I get into it. The president unveils a 3,000 shillings monthly stipend, smartphones, health insurance for village elders. That was announced yesterday in State House. In the latest move, he hosted more than 10,000 village elders at State House in Nairobi, where he unveiled a package of incentives in a bid to woo them. The president unveiled a 3,000 shillings monthly stipend, smartphones, health insurance, and training for the village elders, crucial for shaping narrative and opinions in the respective villages. So that is there. Okay. Finally, on the political side, which is also here, Linda Mwananchi movement leaders meet with registrar of political parties, and they're seeking review to allow formal party registration. Interesting times ahead. They will know their fate by the end of this week. And finally, on the front page of the Daily Nation reports that why Uhuru's Azimio plan faces resistance. Why Uhuru's Azimio plan faces resistance? Of course, is it a case of a strategy where former President Uhuru Kenyatta on Monday chaired a meeting that resolved to expand the coalition's membership? Former President Uhuru Kenyatta's concerted push to revive the Azimio coalition has triggered an implosion and rebellion within the wider opposition, with critics alleging a scheme to install Kalonzo Musyoka as its presidential flag bearer. That is what I have here. But while that is also happening, there's not some good news for health workers across the country, where county's health crisis deepens as striking medics begin. A couple of them, one of them led by Uasin Gishu county health workers, demonstrating outside the county assembly in Uasin Gishu, that is in Eldoret. So that is what I have here. All right, so that is what I have here. Let's talk about matters. You can go ahead and take your favorite paper and read more details for you. Let me get into the discussion. First of all, let me bring in Senior Ken Bosiri, who is a training and consulting editor. Good morning, Ken.
Morning.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thanks for having me.
Asante sana. In 2001, the Vision 2030 is launched. You are in the newsroom. How was the writing then?
First of all, thank you.
Down memory lane.
Victor, thank you. No, it takes me a long time when I was still at the desk.
Yes.
And trying to run through the day's papers. And I think it's important, first of all, before we even get into this, that these visions,
yes,
and the blueprints, what we call roadmaps, they're not unique. It's not just 2030. Yes, every administration has had its blueprint from the very onset in the 1965s. Just after independence, we had the sessional paper number 10, which also spelled out the route that Kenya would follow. And then every 5-year cycle, political cycle, there is a plan on what that government comes in, and it is normally captured in what we call a manifesto. And those are the blueprints. And then there was another major aspect that came, because we have to trace the history of all these visions.
Yes. We
came to the what we call economic recovery strategy that was done at the very early stages of Kibaki and Nyong'o, Professor Nyong'o, economic strategy and recovery for wealth creation and employment. And then Vision 2030 was the climax of all those the blueprints we've had. Subsequently, we've also had, out of that Vision 2030,
yes,
the Jubilee government came in and they just picked a few things from the blueprint and called it the Big Four agenda. And out of the Big Four, which are also elements that are captured in the 2030 vision. And then the current government, Kenya Kwanza, picked out of it and did what we call the better better thing. And then out of the better now, out of all these things, are they now thinking of 2060. But what to note is that while these things were coming in, these blueprints, especially 2030, it's actually close to 18 years since we talked about, because the whole process began in 2006. And the documentation went through participation, through the experts, came to other people, then finally it was launched in 2008, not 2021 as it were, 2008, and then that marks about 18 years down the line. And it's a succession of plans that we have to do. But what I remember most is that when these things were conceived, 2030, there was deep involvement. The media was at the heart of these things.
Yeah.
Because the experts spoke and they met us every day. And permit me at this time, I think, just to honor one of the guys. The guy who was the head of the secretariat then, the late Dr. Wahome Gakuru. He was the man at the head of the secretariat, and he was very engaging.
Yeah.
He had what we called editors' breakfasts, briefing us through every stage of it. So the editors, the media was very well aligned. We got to understand the philosophical thinking behind it and what it was meant. So when we're reporting from a point of knowledge,
yes,
a point of involvement, a point of ownership.
How unique was it at that point?
It was unique because 2020, that vision came against the backdrop of very many shocks. We were just recovering from the post-Kanu period,
yes,
when the economic slump was really down, and there was clamor for constitution. So the whole country needed to be aligned. And those papers, those blueprints, were speaking to trying to rally Kenyans to think ahead. We were, of course, borrowing from other countries that had gone down that path, that you have to be very structured. What are the pillars you're going to use? Because then it was just to be a manifesto, but manifesto based on broader victims. Yeah. Because the thing was that Kenya had lost its potential, and we needed to get it on a point where we would make it globally competitive in clean and hygienic environments. We had gone through a period of very seismic political seasons. And you know, the bad politics, the instability ended up disrupting the economic activity, the social activities.
Yeah.
So that was the backdrop to all these things.
I'm just trying to be a little bit curious, because the first vision 2030 came at a time that Kenyans were not aware of the word vision. So what was the reception like?
Everybody was beginning to say, what is this vision? Could it just be another blueprint?
Yes.
But then what was important, that the media was very involved at that point, because the media did its part. Once you know what you're doing, then it was an aspiration, and that aspiration is what we built on. And then it was structured in such a way that there was clarity for the first time that this is what we want to do as a country, and it was structured in phases.
Yeah.
And this is why it was important for us, is that the media was able to understand, audit it, and what we call inform the public, because the participation was very inclusive. So we were covering the county forums, the provincial forums, where people are coming together to discuss. We, unlike what we have now, that started right from the grassroots. After the experts, it was everybody else took it to the grassroots before we launched. So the discussions were very important. It was participatory, it was inclusive, and it involved both international and local experts. And then finally went back to the public. And as the media, because we understood what it was, and there was a lot of buy-in at that time. You know, this was just after the 2002 election.
Yes, yes.
When Kenyans, for once, that moment that yote yawezekana, that anything is possible. So there was a belief and trust in the systems, in the political class, that they would deliver us from what we had seen as bad governance in the one party.
There was a hope for a new change.
A lot of hope, optimism. In fact, at one point we were voted as the most optimistic country in the world. And we trusted everybody before the bad manners of our politics set in. And you know, 2005, in the fight to get the constitution, because we had promised in 2002 that we'd do a constitution in 100 days. We did not do the constitution in 100 days. That set a stage for contestation. And that contestation is what led to the 2005 referendum. The referendum then set a very competitive thing that in the end culminated in the, I think, was the precursor to set the stage for the 2007, what really brought the country to the brink. So all those, the vision then began to rally us to a point. And at that time, for once, Kenyans, after that shake of 2007, got a point that they would rally themselves. And people from a political, across the political divide came in, and said we need to put Kenya on its path.
But then again, because, after 2007, someone would argue that Kenyans were we shocked ourselves. We shocked ourselves because the animosity, the kind of tension that was just brewing across the country, at some point just broke out. Then now the Vision 2030 here we have got the referendum, we have the exit of the last regime. So much was happening in the mind of Wanjiku. So how did politics play a key role in ensuring that Wanjiku really got the message clear, and even other supporting organs to support the Vision 2030 to move? Because way back then it was President Mwai Kibaki,
yes,
who was a very reserved kind of leader.
What is important that you've got to look at the culture of this country.
Yeah.
That in the manner of thinking, Wanjiku's thinking and behavior has largely been shaped by all those key political players.
So they listen more to the politicians.
The key political players.
Yeah.
One of the key political players then was Raila. Raila's input and ownership of this document, because we had just come into the Grand Coalition government. So we sorted ourselves and tunneled our thinking into this thing. So the late Prime Minister himself was so critical. He was so insistent because he was key in what we call the Economic Council that was at the heart of drafting these things. He was very particular because it spoke to what he would have delivered to the country in 2007. That was part of his manifesto.
Yes, yes.
And they found convergence. With Kibaki was also thinking economics, and that was, I think, the best time that we are able to say we had our bad manners. But Kenyans have a way of rebooting them, of getting ourselves, we throw ourselves to the edge and we say, let's step back and reflect. And for me, this Vision 2030 was a rallying call that ended up tunneling us. Those aspirations were expressed in the 2010 Constitution.
Yeah.
Yes.
There were three of them, the social, economic, and political. What necessitated these three pillars?
This is broadly what spoke to our situation then. We needed, because this vision also speaks to the broader, what we call the social development goals. Because socially, our infrastructure was down, our health systems were down. And at that time, we also talking about the structural adjustment programs that had broken very many government aspects, like health. It was cost sharing. So everybody was feeling the squeeze. We had gone through the structural adjustment programs that were very painful to the country.
Yes.
So when this economic, the pillars came, the social aspect was supposed to address how do we fix the pain that was in the health sector, education sector, and all those things. That broadly.
And remember, we had a fragmented society.
Very.
Yeah.
And then you see, out of this, all our Bill of Rights is based on that social pillar. A lot of it, the health, the education, and other things. But then the political pillar now spoke about the bottom line about the economic pillar is that we had realized that one of our greatest things that disrupts our development, cohesion as a country, was about our bad politics. And we needed to clean our politics, play politics on ideology, fix the governance structures. That was what was important. Because once you fix the politics, and that has always been our underside, and that is very disruptive. Look at the 2007, 2008. It was because of politics that we ended up burning up and destroying what we had gained in terms of economics and social cohesion. So it's that point that the pillar on politics was supposed to talk about governance. That's how devolution was born. So that we can redistribute our resources, create centers of power, so that allow Wanjiku to be at the heart of the decision making on what to do. So devolution was born out of this political pillar. And then things like Techno-City Concert were born out of the fact that we needed to develop and create in terms of social and economic development.
Okay. Let's just go back. When you look at the social pillar, it was about investing in people first, the way you put it, because we had to come back and mend the bridges. The social pillar talked about education that you've talked about, education and training, healthcare, water and sanitation, housing and urbanization, environment, gender equality, youth and development, sports, arts, etc., and finally, social protection for vulnerable groups. In all this, what have we achieved when it comes to health, education, housing, environment? All this, when you look at them, are also actually in the Kenya Quad administration. When you talk about housing, that is one. We have health, education, which was President Mwai Kibaki's main nut that actually locked his government. What have we achieved in the social pillar?
We have had what we called mixed kind of outcomes.
Yes.
Because we have made attempts. We have probably not gone the full cycle, but we also recognize that achievement is a social pillar. It's a process. When you talk about health, I see now what we call in SHA is part of that, what we call universal health service. And then we are talking about what we call education, an attempt to bring in what we free education, allow access to education. We are talking about technology development. We've given ourselves the TVETs. We're trying to open up more opportunities for education. And I think largely, let me point out that false starts, attempts, but the political pillar still continues to be the disruptive element.
Yes.
Because the politics seem to take a bigger space in terms of, we look at it in terms of, and our politics are really personality based. If we looked at the ideological bent, there have been a lot of gains that have been made, especially in the education sector. It may not be enough, but at least we have made an attempt. For me, what I will say that the attempt has been there, and we can see visible. Like now we see the housing. It's part of what we have spoken about for a long time. But implementation, the process, the participation is still a weak point. The public participation element. That's why it was brought into the Constitution.
Yes.
That for me to achieve all these things, you need to carry everybody along. Because you're talking about people. A country is about people. Development is about people.
Yeah.
That's why we now measure development in terms of not GDP. We measure it in terms of the Human Development Index. How have I developed? How has my life changed in these programs? And this is where, in most cases, we are missing the point. And when you politicize, then people begin to look at silos. And this is why, as a country, we need to have a conversation. And the media, for me, plays a critical role in terms of doing an audit. Where have the hits and misses been? Because now everybody's talking about, we see another vision. But have we looked at what we have achieved? How are we building? Because it's a continuum. It's not something, it's not just an event. We started from 63. All these things, they are critical things that we needed to achieve. We've come with blueprints. Have they achieved? Where have we failed? And this is exactly where we need to have a discussion.
Talk of going back. I mean, do we have what are some of the lessons that we've gotten from the development strategies that were put in the Vision 2030, now that we have Vision 26 with us here?
I think some of the things, I think we like in the IT sector.
Yes.
I think we've done well. The IT sector. You know, Kenya is rated as one of the best IT savvy places. We landed the fiber. Now we're able to get the fast internet. That's part of what was the Vision 2030.
Yes.
I think that element, in terms of being IT and tech savvy, I think we have done extremely well, because we are now leveraging on creating jobs, online jobs. It's because that facility is available. And that for me is the top score in terms of what.
Let's just go back a little bit. And should anything happen, and President Mwai Kibaki would come back to life and talk to us once again and look at Vision 2030, what the leaps that we've made as a nation, what do you think he would say?
First of all, you'll be shocked that we abandoned that path. Our fidelity to the implementation of that, it was very straight and spelled out. But the Jubilee government came in. They picked what they thought was the juicy parts. They did not, if they followed, we had faithfully followed the path. And with sobriety, we would have made bigger strides.
So which means the successive governments picked some parts of the Vision 2030 to develop their manifestos.
But they forgot that the mother blueprint was Vision 2030. In fact, there's been very little mention of Vision 2030. In the Kibaki era, everything else was domiciled on the 3 pillars, and we kept on reminding ourselves this is part of the Vision 2030. But the successive governments have tended to pick a few things and own them, and not say that we've picked them from Vision 2030. So that cherry picking has been one of our greatest undoings.
Do you think we need more than this? Because still, we're not so sure what the pillars of Vision 2060 will be. But do you think we need more pillars? Because we have got economic, social, and political. What else do we need? Because when you have these 3 pillars, remember way back then we had the committee of experts who came up with these 3. And they have got in bullet forms and whatever, which was under social, economic, and political. Do we need any other apart from these 3? Or we just need to circle around the 3 and make them better?
I think what we need to do is to strengthen the pillars, because these pillars speak to the broad spectrum of exactly what the aspiration of a country is in terms of the social development, the Bill of Rights, and our document as a constitution. Which
it's like the constitution has been squeezed into these 3 pillars.
The constitution expresses the aspirations of all these things and gives us the legal legs, how to achieve them. And spells us and begins to tell us the Constitution then gives us the governance aspect on how we are going to run. It talks about how we are supposed to, devolution is part of the Constitution. And that means you begin to involve people to the grassroots, disperse power. The Constitution, what's the second Bill of Rights? I'm entitled to health, I'm entitled to housing, clean water and everything. There are all those are expressed in our Constitution. They have been captured in that document that binds us all as we the people. And this is what speaks to us. It's actually what we need to pay attention to and then ask ourselves, can we remove these things without pushing one pillar and weakening the other pillars? And clarity of mind in what we need to do. That's exactly where we are so lost in discussions.
We take a quick break.
Right.
Well, let's just discuss more. Because in exactly 1 week, the Vision 2060 will be launched. So let's take a break. We'll be right back with more with the KBC series. Stay with us. They say that for you to go far, you must have a vision. Okay, so that's why we're talking Vision 2060. Just asking a colleague of mine here called Faith. I asked her, where was she in 2001? Do you know what she said? I was not yet born. So Faith, this belongs to you. This discussion belongs to you. Okay, so let's talk about youth and employment. The key aspect here was to solve the youth unemployment in the country. And the successive governments start with the Kibaki government, get into the Jubilee administration, and now we have got the Kenya Kwanza administration. One of the key things is to solve or to resolve the youth unemployment. I don't know, let me pick your mind where the missing mark was when it came to Vision 2060, when it comes to youth unemployment. And if you're given a chance to sit around that table where Vision 2060 is being designed, what do you tell that team of 2, 3, 4 people forming that?
One of the things I think is very interesting that you ask about the question of the youth. These visions are created for generations. Vision 2034 was for our generation. And that's why you started by asking me going down memory lane, because that was the moment for me. The energy was there, and I was able to visualize myself. All other factors are constant. I would have said I would have lived for 30 years. And thankfully, I've gone...
You'll be here?
Yeah, I'll be here. So, at the center, at that committee, I looked at the composition of the committee. First of all, it had the people who midwifed the 2030 were still trying to midwife another document for the next generation. Professor Nyong'o was there. All those professors, all those experts you saw presenting this thing. But granted that they were given that chance, because Vision 2030, there are very many undone things. What in my view is that the people need to sit at that, to own it, to pass the baton. Those experts needed to have youth at the center of this discussion, because the aspirations of 2060 we'll be talking about the youth that we are talking about today. 70-80% of Kenyans are youth, and they need to own the document. But there was that intersection where they needed to understand, what did you aspire in 2030? Where were the hits and misses? Now you're picking. You're not starting on a clean slate.
Yeah.
You are starting on. You're going to work on what and build on what we have. Now what we need is new thinking, new energy into that document, in whatever vision, because a vision is an aspiration that must speak to my current, must be current, and the people who carried now the aspirations of the new Kenya, the tomorrow Kenya of 2060, are the youth. They needed. I didn't see that face of the youth in that team that was crafted.
But the skills that were being needed to have the youth well equipped was achieved. The TVETs, the middle colleges, and all that.
But they need to own it. They need to own it. They need to feel that we've been involved in the crafting of what really touches our lives. They need to feel it. Otherwise, then it becomes an academic exercise. There is an aspiration and the lived reality. The people are going to live the reality of 2060 are the current youth. And we must put them right at the starting point. That they must, when the starter's gun goes off, they'll say, yes, I saw the drafting, I saw the philosophy, I want to live by those tenets, those aspirations that have been set in the 3 pillars. The political thing, detribalize our nation, begin to think about what politics of ideology as opposed to regionalism and personality. They will live through it, and they will see the folly. They will be able to, they sit at that intersection where they see, we had a good vision. Why didn't we achieve it? The problem was our bad manners that are as a result of socialization from the early days caught up with us. The youth have a new social set of values that they can begin, because we saw them speaking out, saying we want to be at this table, not to be in the menu. That's what we are trying to tell them, that we can plan for you, but they must be part of this planning process.
Perhaps not even part of it, maybe the secretariat, we should have some faces of youth owning it, because the next 30 years, you never know. The likes of professors, Professor Nyong'o was there, and we have got some young, good brains. Let me come back and ask about it, because do you think the government should borrow certain things from Vision 2030 to Vision 2060?
A lot of things, a lot of undone things, because it's a continuum. We cannot say this is cut off.
That now start afresh.
In fact, we need this Vision 2030 is just should be a renamed version, a refined version of 2030, because a lot of what we are speaking about today is already enunciated and aspired to in Vision 2030. If we fix the 3 pillars, because those are the big things, the social aspect, the political aspect, particularly the politics, all these things, unless we have all these visions are premised on the fact that we'll have a political, a socially political and stable environment, because you cannot have investors to invest here and create jobs for the youth in a very unstable political environment. So stability of a country, a clean environment where we all speak ideology where we believe in, and we have value systems that define our society. Our attempt to get chapter 6 was devalued. We need to begin to go back to that chapter 6 of the Constitution to enable us to elect proper leaders who are accountable to us, to elect leaders who will know what it's beyond themselves. We need to know that corruption is a bad thing, and that is all spelled out. Our good manners as a country should be, chapter 6 for me should be the strengthened path before we go into Vision 2030.
We talk about the 3 pillars, but there's other side of the political class, and you'll agree with me. Some politicians would pick what is just convenient for them at that point and get to the Vision 2060, borrow a few things here and there, and craft their manifestos from MCAs, talk to the women rep, talk about the governors and all that. They'll just go back to the Vision 2030, the 3 pillars, and pick what is good for them at that point. Let me ask you, I mean, if it was an act of parliament to lock the Vision 2060 moving forward, don't you think it would make the successive governments to operate within that framework, that do not come with your manifesto. We have a manifesto here that is going to guide all the way from Mandera to the southern part of this country that we operate within that pillar. So don't come with your own manifesto as a country or as a candidate.
I think the manifestos largely that come from these politicians, they pick from the big frame, which is Vision 2030. But then it goes to that one single point. Do we make them personal, or they're still...
Now, that's the thing, yes.
Yeah. We still have to own them as a country. As a voter has a big role to hear. You speak about this pillar. And even one of the pillars is weak, then the whole edifice collapses. And this is a problem that we have been cherry-picking. We've not been faithful. We've been very cosmetic. And the political class looks at the short-term gains. It always picks what is, for me, the easiest thing. For me, something that is excitable. And yet, for us, our fidelity to Vision 2030 was to walk the whole journey, wholesomely, not in pieces. You can't hop, skip, and jump and hope to get to your destination. You run out of energy, or you will trip. You will trip and then fall. And these are so many falls that we have had. And I think the successive government of Jubilee and Kenya Kwanza have had that point of picking what is convenient for them and what is excitable to their basis. And yet we should have said, we have a vision. What is our fidelity to this vision wholesomely in the three pillars? And we must talk of the three pillars and the three pillars. Today, if we look at better, how broadly does it speak to the three pillars? It has just picked a few aspects of it. It must be moving all the parts and knowing up to this point, if we have moved, let's do an audit. How far are we down? What has hindered us? Because it was very structured. And this structure is what we need to follow. But this all over the place, everybody picking what they think is convenient for them, has been our greatest undoing. And unless we begin to fix, and I keep telling people, we begin to fix our bad manners in the political pillar and get fidelity to that constitution. For example, why haven't we? Because part of it is the 2/3 gender rule. Getting everybody on board. Getting everybody on board. And harnessing the potential of all Kenyans, all citizens. We still see exclusion of people, of certain citizens, whose energy is not being tapped. Everybody's, it must be all hands on deck. But we've not seen that. And this is part of the bad politics that we have.
Sina, look at it this way. When the president was talking about the other day, he mentioned some of the countries that have actually prospered because they had a vision. Or during independence, Kenya was at par with, Singapore, top of the Asian tigers and all that. So the question is, how has the Vision 2030 getting to the Vision 2060 now? So that you can have a clear vision. Has it helped, or how has it helped Kenya to get that international rank, the global ranking as a nation?
I think part of it is that we have tried, like we said, we have picked a few aspects and run with it. But globally, there is a bigger vision for all the countries to follow. There's already a frame. There's SDGs. Because that is, all these things are not picked out of isolation. They have been picked from those SDGs. And each country expresses them in their vision. And out of it begins to say, this is how we shall achieve them. Because in the end, we're talking about human development. And this human development, cannot stay in isolation. We are interconnected. If we do bad politics, we cannot implement what is in the social pillar and economic pillar. If we do bad politics, then we cannot implement, we create unstable societies that cannot invest, cannot grow the economy, so that we absorb people. We cannot have education, we cannot spend properly. So this is what is important, that we must move everybody along, and we must, first of all, clean our politics, our hygiene. Who do we elect? Who is the driver? Who is going to be the people who are driving this vision? If you have a reckless driver, he'll run you off the road. And this recklessness is often expressed through our political elite. And this is where, the aspiration of the Constitution, we the people, where do we the people become irrelevant in the process? That is so key in our Constitution. That's why we talk about participation, inclusivity, and in terms of beginning to speak and ideology. In fact, we have right now, looks like it's okay, we can do cosmetic fixes.
Yeah.
And yet those cosmetic fixes end up causing a lot of damage. And this is what we have done with all our blueprints.
Okay. Assume you're sitting behind your computer in the newsroom, and now Vision 2060 is here, or you're giving just a build-up to Vision 2060, which is be launched next week on Wednesday. How would your writing be? Would it be futuristic? Just give me an idea of how you'd write that paper.
First of all,
on a Monday,
I will start. Yes, it's good to aspire, but where are we? Where have we come from? Have we kept our faith to what we have? You, first of all, do what we call a ground check. Where are you standing?
Yeah.
Before you begin to leap, you go to the second floor of a house. You begin from the base. Before you build your house, have I put the proper pillars? And if I put the pillars, have I strengthened them? And have I been faithful to what I set out to do as a country, as a society? This is exactly where the point is. Before we leap, we need an interface here before we even have, maybe in that discussion that will be about Vision 2060, before we Christianize it, there has to be, where have we come from? What have we done? Where have we gone wrong? And then say, here we can give ourselves a tick.
Yeah.
And what can we then pick, and what can we say at what point? Because we are not starting from ground zero.
Yeah.
We already are on the path. And there's a lot of what we call passionate, self-caressing talk about, it's almost like essayist, but development and the aspirations of a country. If you have walked 18 years that we have come, what have we done? Have we gone backwards or gone forward? Today we are talking about more youth unemployment. It has a social repercussion. We've talking about a health process that is not growing. Do we know how many people we are planning for today? Have we done a census to know? Because we are talking about a vision. For who are you planning? What is the size of your population? There are certain fundamentals that must be looked at. I know the people, and what is the number, and how am I going to resource apply, and is everybody carrying along? Today as we are, I don't think we can speak. Each one of us has a tunnel vision. Instead of the bigger vision, each one of us has a vision that is just around themselves.
Great. Senior, let's talk about the political goodwill. Because this has to happen, because if the political goodwill is quite fluid, then Wanjiku will not get the right message. So let's talk about the political and governance reforms. Do you think there's some parts which are necessary to make Vision 2060 come to fruition? Yes,
like today what you've just mentioned, what you saw in one of the headlines was about ranking governors. This is still the bad manners of putting things.
This development in counties, when you see...
It's not counties, it's about personalities, glorifying personalities.
They're the heads of these counties. So if you're making good use of our resources, then who takes the bigger chunk of
I think
glory?
This conversation should have been talking about Wanjiku more. And talk about what are the things. Because I see more heads here. I should have seen a frame on page 1 saying these were the benchmarks that we did.
But who takes the glory? The governors.
The governors. And this is exactly what has been our problem. Personalization of what should be our national aspirations. And the moment we bring Wanjiku to the center of this without bringing who is behind it, making Wanjiku know that I own this governor responds to what I want, is exactly what it is. It's not what so-and-so has done.
So how can Wanjiku be included in the front seat?
We need the law on public participation. I've just seen in Siaya where people are fighting. I said, you want to do something which is good, but you've not involved me. Unless you involve the person and say, yes, I think this works for me. I look at what is happening in Kibera, in slum, in the housing. People were volunteering. They didn't have to get the police to move them out. They said, we need these houses. They were moving themselves out and saying, we are creating space for houses because they have owned it. They understand the benefits. So there has been ownership and acceptance that this is what I need. Then make them understand that things like in the social pillar, once you're in those organized housing, you will get your water, all those amenities that speak to the social pillar. This is how you structure, you carry everybody along.
Yeah.
You explain to them. You don't come raining down on them and say, this is good for you. It must be how this is what I want. And we need to create, for me, the revolution was supposed to be that moment where we sit in Homa Bay County and say, I, at Oyugis, this is what I need. I don't need a flyover. I need a school.
Did you have to mention Oyugis?
Yes. That's closer to my home, so I understand it. So this is where we would just say,
I know why.
Yeah, this is what it means. This is what I want.
Yeah.
Not what the MP wants. And telling them, and the MP becomes a facilitator in terms of what, because they sit at the point we've given them, do for us.
Yes.
It's like your children saying, Daddy, today we would like to eat, would desire to have some chicken.
Yeah.
And then you facilitate the chicken.
And when you talk about the counties, we the two levels of county governments, the county and the national, of course. The new constitution gave us those two levels. So what should be the bridge between the two levels of government to make sure that the Vision 2030 works perfectly well?
I think
there had been a struggle between the two levels. Sometimes in the past, they had not so good kind of relationship.
It is about territorial, refusing to cede power, refusing to cede, and that power goes with certain resources. Some people resisting that if I give this, I'm going to empower this. But also on the flip side, the people went into the counties as county governors. They went with the same frame, template of the national thing, the big man syndrome.
Right.
I'm going to sit there and tell people what to do. I'm going to dish these things, because you've seen projects named after people. After every project, it's a school project, it's done by Governors One. So that's not the point. The point should be the counties were supposed to be centers of production, centers that were spurring economic activity, centers where people were supposed to get more involved. But we see what is happening at the counties is exactly what is happening at the national level. So the two places, they have the ego trips, they have territorial things they want to do, but yet they forget the person they're supposed to serve here is the Kenyan.
Yeah.
The national, whatever, local, it's about Wanjiku. And if Wanjiku is not served, we see more often that Wanjiku being relegated to the sidelines, this is good for you.
Yes.
And this is exactly where we need to get ourselves. Wanjiku needs to be at the forefront in getting involved. I want to see less talking heads, less figures of heads of who is in charge of the county. We should be talking about County A has done the following. This is how it has moved its development index, as opposed to the person who is sitting in County A.
Perfect. I like the way you put it. No talking heads. You want to see a county.
I want to see a county, yes.
Great. See, now, let's do this. You know, we have got saboteurs. And the president is the chief principal when it comes to having a vision of a country. Allow me to ask you, some of the biggest risks that should be avoided to make this vision work, that the president and even the team responsible should be very much aware of, some of the biggest risks based on the previous experience.
I think one of the things that we can learn from the inclusion of the launch of Vision 2030 was more sober and not antagonistic politics. The president is the head of state. It is the Baba Taifa.
Yeah.
Baba has to take a more embracing role. He's attempting to say, let's carry everybody on board, which is really what we should do. But that contradiction comes in as him as a politician again. I would have loved to say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to bring everybody else. You know, one of our greatest problems is, while he has good ideas, all leaders have good ideas, but there is one thing that they want to be in the next government, the competitive next thing. If I came in with a manifesto, a 5-year manifesto, and I want to, this is what I promised to do, let me do it without thinking that I want to be re-elected. Let me do it, let the people judge you and re-elect you. I would like to see a president or an MP or a governor who says, I'll do what I was supposed to do and I promised to do. Whether you re-elect me or not, it is not my problem. I would have, my contract is this period. The next one, it's up to you. But we are not allowing the voter now to assess you and say, you are telling them, I have done this for you, so you owe me.
Yes.
This owe me attitude. I would like to see the president as the person trying to shepherd this, to bring more reconciliation, more inclusivity, and reduce his urge and appetite to be re-elected. That should not be his focus. You should not do these things because you want to get re-elected. You do these things because, it's your duty and you're doing it for the country, so that you carry it above yourself. And once this happens, then you bring down the temperatures. Kibaki talked less. We want to see less talk, more involvement, more delegation, so that everybody is on board and feels that we are part of the moving parts. But if we begin to personalize it, you begin to put your fingerprints on it, then everybody's going to get murky. Everybody's trying to put their fingers on it.
So as we come to a close, how different should this be? That time, the launch is there, the entire state is involved, the sector players, the civil society. We had got the judiciary way back then because I had the legal background. We had Wanjiku at the forefront. So let me just ask you, as we finalize, now, how should this be different when it comes to the issue to do with the launching of Vision 2060? How should it be handled differently?
I think one of these, let's remove a lot of bureaucracy from it. That assembly should not be about boardroom staff, a boardroom kind of staging. We should have what we call almost a national assembly type, where we bring all people on board. And the people who have drawn the blueprint listen more to, because there are aspirations. There are people that need to speak. We need to speak to it, get more people across. And for me, we should have started from the people's assemblies, right? The Kamkunjis, the people's parliaments, then harness those things, test this thing against it, so that we begin from, if it's at Kamkunji, what do the people, so that people say, in this thing we've achieved the thing from the social pillar. This is it. You can feel it. If you're talking about the sports element, how do I feel it? It's not an abstraction. We must begin to make it real and ownership. This is what we need. And begin it, doing it at the level where it's being done. It's very official. It's a statecraft thing, while it should be a Wanjiku craft, a Wanjiku driven stuff. And this is why I really must begin to stress that we need to get that public participation law enacted and respected. Because unless you carry Wanjiku along, these things are just going to be so and so did it, so and so launched it, to just be ticking boxes. But we now do a reality check.
It should be Wanjiku oriented.
Wanjiku oriented.
All right. Sina, we have to stop it at that point. We started at 7, it's now 8 sharp, so we have to thank you for joining us. We'll be having more of this discussion moving forward, because come next week on 12th of August, that should be on Wednesday, the president will be launching. We're yet to get more information, but as you've heard, be part and parcel of the conversation, because the Vision 2060 is about the nation. It's about you and me. So let's talk about it as a nation. The public participation will be, going across the country. And of course, if you're called upon, go there and make your voice count. All right, asante sana. Ken Bosire,
yes,
who is the training and consulting editor with so many years of experience behind the newsroom. Asante sana for being part of the show.
Thank you.
Okay, let's take a break. GMK continues after this. Stay with us.